Hello Internet, Demajen here. Quick video for you because of things and reasons. Normally at around this time of year, in fact before this time of year, it would have normally come out today, I would have produced a, let's generously call it an awards video for the year with my various best in category games and gaming related experiences. But due to the fact that Endwalker was pushed back, and the fact that it's been one of the busiest, in fact, if not the busiest term for supply teachers, or for as long as I've been doing the job, which is what, 13, 14 years now, and COVID, and otherwise real illness with my back, and the sheer volume of Endwalker footage that I've got still clogging up my hard drive. And of course, let's be honest, the fact that I'm still playing Endwalker, as you can tell from the video in the background that I'm doing this introduction to, because I've forgotten to turn off the window capture. I haven't been able to produce a full-on, exciting, dramatic, multiple categories with multiple fancy animation-y style things. I haven't been able to do a really big video for my awards. So I'm just going to run through my games of the year, games of 2021 from various categories. It's not going to be a top 10 or anything like that. It's just going to be, these are some categories that I'm interested in. These are the games that, for me, won out in those categories. We're going to start off with best moment-to-moment gameplay. This is a game that when you're there, when you sat there, when you're playing it, you are enjoying the crap out of it. It's actually a game that I've not played a huge amount because I didn't like certain things in terms of how it hogged your console. I am, of course, talking about Housemarque's Returnal. An absolutely cracking game. Wonderful to look at. Proper bullet hell shooter. Some people would argue that it's the closest that you could come to a modern Metroid style game. I absolutely loved Returnal, but I could not stand the fact that it held your PlayStation hostage in the middle of a run. But in terms of the moment-to-moment gameplay, it is an astonishing game to look at. It is an entertaining game to play. It's got a great mystery to go with it. But for best-looking moment-to-moment gameplay, Returnal beats every other game on my list. So well done. It's arguably it's very much the least played game on this list, but it's had a massive impression on me this year. And now that the game no longer holds your system hostage, I can play it whenever we want because it's got a save and resume function. Excellent. Next category is Best Metroidvania Game. Not Metroid game. Metroidvania game. I define a Metroidvania game as being a game that has got some kind of general upgrade style RPG-like system to it. And best Metroidvania for me this year is, again, not actually one that I've put the most time into, but certainly the one that I enjoyed the most was Grime. Grime is a surreal body horror-esque, almost Dark Souls style game, realistically. It's almost a 2.5D Metroidvania Souls-like. It's got brilliant music, it's got captivating graphics, it's got a massive and very varied and very odd world for you to explore. Just overall, it was an excellent experience. And that was at launch. Now, thanks to, let's generously call it feedback, the developers have added in a load of extra quality of life things, which realistically I don't necessarily think the game needed, to be honest, but I have to admit it does make the world more traversable, shall we say. The devs are in the middle of working on an expansion for the game of sorts, a DLC, a patch, or something like that, with new bosses, new abilities, etc., etc. Really looking forward to getting my hands on those. Highly recommend as well popping into the game's Discord channel because the devs are really active there. Really small team, by the way. There's like 5 people, roughly, involved in the game, and they're all really cool. So, Grime, best Metroidvania, one of the best community experiences that I've had this year as well. Lest you think the daddy of Metroid games this year, Metroid Dread, is not on this list. Yeah, it's not a Metroidvania as far as I'm concerned, but it is a game in my favourite franchise. Metroid Dread gets the award for best feeling gameplay. I know that I said Returnal was the best kind of looking moment-to-moment gameplay, but Metroid Dread on the Switch, it's not a superlative-looking game. It is really good-looking, considering it's on the Switch, and it does look really, really, really good, emulated in 4K on a PC, because you can do that. You're not allowed to, but it can be done. But in terms of the feel of the game, with a Pro Controller, with the Switch docked, blown up on my nice 4K monitor, Metroid Dread was the best feeling game I played all year. Controlling Samus, her animations, just the smoothness of that gameplay was, quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, outstanding. And that's why it gets my best feeling gameplay award for this year. Best atmosphere. I was very torn on this one, and if it weren't for the fact that I've already given a award, there's no rewards, sorry folks. If it weren't for the fact that I've already given an award to Returnal, there was very much a toss-up for this one. But realistically, I think the best atmosphere in a game this year went to Resident Evil Village. The first half of the game, at least. The stuff in the castle I thought was brilliant. After that, it's not that it wasn't atmospheric, it's just that it kind of changed the feeling of the game in a way that I wasn't necessarily expecting. But the first part, in the castle, being chased around by the sisters, I know it's very meme-worthy. And, you know, sexy vampire ladies, yada, yada, yada. Of course you're going to like that. But actually, I do really feel like the atmosphere in that section was really well done. It was a nice evolution of Resi 2's being chased around sections, and Resi 3, for that matter. So that's my award for Best Atmosphere. It was a toss-up between that and Returnal. Best Premise. This is one that I don't do very often. This is for a game that I really like the idea of, but the execution wasn't necessarily there. And it's actually one of the first games I played in 2021, and that was The Medium. I really, really liked the premise of The Medium, the split screen aspect of it, the moving between different dimensions and so on and so forth. I really like the idea of that. The technicalities were, I don't want to say a disaster because that would be unfair, but it didn't go as well as realistically you would have wanted it to. You didn't need an absolute beast of a PC to really get that running properly. I might even be able to do it now that I've got the 3090, but probably still not all that well because it was literally rendering 2 games at once, and you know, computers aren't necessarily made for that. But yeah, I love the premise of The Medium. I love how the visuals and the gameplay worked with kinda the idea and the background of the premise of the game. I thought that was great. What else have we got on this list? Most listened to video game soundtrack. Grime. Easily Grime. I listen to a lot of video game soundtracks. Maybe not as many as I used to because I spend a lot of time editing. But yeah, I listened to the Grime soundtrack many, many more times than any other video game soundtrack this year. There were two composers responsible mostly for the Grime soundtrack. You've got Alex Rowe of Souls-like game remix fame, who does pretty much all, as far as I'm aware, of the big, bombastic, Souls-like orchestral boss musics. And then you have Sean, I think it's Seca, apologies Sean if I've pronounced your surname wrong, who does a lot of the ambient tracks for the game. If I was going to choose my top three tracks from actually the Grime soundtrack, I'd actually say The Pale Sky by Sean is my favourite, just because of how different it was and how haunting and how otherworldly. And then I'd follow that up with the just amazing bombasticity, I don't think that's actually a word, of the Misbegotten Amalgam fight, which is, or at least it was when I played it, an optional boss fight. It's not anymore. It was missable when I first played the game. Amazing, amazing piece of music. And then I'd say probably in third place is The Grieving Rock Giant, which was a track that started off in one way and gave me a certain set of expectations, and then took me somewhere very, very different. And I really appreciated that in that particular piece of music. But generally speaking, the entirety of the soundtrack, and there's two soundtracks, both available on Steam. There's the ambient OST, which is Sean's stuff, and then there's the actual soundtrack itself, which has got 24 tracks on. It's a good hour's worth of music, and that's got all of Alex Rowe's stuff on, and it's just really, really good. If you like games like, let's say, Bloodborne or Dark Souls, with that kind of really powerful orchestral and choral feel, then even if you didn't particularly like Grime as a game, and you know a lot of people didn't, the soundtrack is worth it alone, in my opinion. But that being said, it is not the soundtrack that is video game related that I have listened to most this year. And that ties me in actually quite nicely to my next award, which goes to the best video game tie-in of 2021, which is without a doubt Netflix's Arcane, the League of Legends TV show. I don't like League of Legends. I have no interest in playing League of Legends. I have heard the horror stories about the League of Legends community. But quite frankly, Arcane, the TV show, was a f***ing good time. I enjoyed every single exciting, depressing, uplifting, downbeating moment of the 9 episodes of that show. I laughed, I cried, I loved the music, and actually the soundtrack that I have listened to most this year is the Arcane soundtrack, which I've been listening to on basically repeats, especially when writing and doing stuff for work, since I got my hands on it. It is an amazing soundtrack. It is an amazing television show. It is, in fact, I mean, although this is a Video Games Awards list, realistically, it is actually my favourite TV show of the year as well. And if you consider the fact that I've watched The Witcher 2, I've watched all of the Marvel stuff, including WandaVision, which I thought was excellent, as well as Loki. Yeah, Arcane just kind of knocks them aside and says, nope, this TV show based on a franchise that you can't stand is gonna knock your socks off. So best video game tie-in goes to Arcane. If I was going to do a best video game tie-in soundtrack, which I'm not really, because there's literally only one thing that could be on it, that would be the Arcane soundtrack as well. If you haven't heard it, if you haven't watched it, watch it. Which leaves me with one final award, which is, of course, Best Narrative / Storytelling in a Video Game, which, shock, horror, holy shit, gasp, surprise, goes to Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker. Because it's a massive cheaty award, because the story's 10 years in the making. It's not like it's a story that they've just put out this year. That being said, although there were some slight pacing issues in Endwalker, if you take Endwalker's story and try and separate it from what has come before, it's still a really well told story for the most part. But of course, it's incredibly difficult to do that because I've been playing this game since the alpha of 1.0, let alone starting with The Realm Reborn. I've been with this game for the long haul. I was one of the people that tore apart the alpha version of 1.0, and I've still got a page of very, very scathing notes that I wrote and posted on the forum for the devs about how shit 1.0 was. Especially its input lag, and trying to do anything in that game was just embarrassingly terrible. And yeah, with Endwalker, I mean, it's the 31st today, it's New Year's Eve. As far as I'm aware, you still can't buy Endwalker because I believe sales have still been stopped. It's been so successful that they've had to stop selling the game because the servers can't handle it. That might have changed. I might be wrong and out of date. I don't know. But Endwalker has got everything you want from a single-player console Final Fantasy game, but with the advantages, quote-unquote, of it also being an ongoing, persistent multiplayer game that you can just keep on hopping back into, like I do, and have been doing every single day that I've been well enough to since Endwalker released. An absolutely superlative narrative experience and a capstone to an amazing story arc. So those are my awards for 2021. There are a lot of other games that I played in 2021 that realistically deserve some special mention, so I'll give quick mentions to these. Ender Lilies and Fist Forged in Shadow Torch, two excellent Metroidvania games with two very, very different and distinct art styles. Ender Lily had this beautiful, dark, whimsical, almost fairy tale style approach to its art. Not the best map though. Fist Forged in Shadow Torch, 2.5D steampunk-ish, or diesel punk actually I think it was called, wasn't it? Animal character inspired narrative with some slightly iffy translations and storytelling in places, but the actual exploration was excellent in that. Pronti, actually, Fishy Adventure, that I think the last Metroidvania that I played this year, deserving of a mention as well, save for the Hellish Rabbiters boss, which can go die in a fire, frankly. Death's Gambit Afterlife, I think, gets a little mention. A lot of these games actually are Metroidvanias, just because that's mostly what I've played. Death's Gambit Afterlife, 8 Doors, Astalon, Vermonium, even Exorcist Fairy, although I had some massive problems with the last 25% of that game. And actually, even Axiom Verge 2, although I'd say for me it was probably the most meh Metroidvania game that I've played this year. Probably the most meh game I've actually played this year. Other games that I've played a lot of this year, Back 4 Blood. I know it's not Left 4 Dead 2. I know it doesn't have a lot of the modding possibilities, but played with my friends, Back 4 Blood was a great experience. Aliens Fireteam Elite actually was a really good experience as well. I don't actually know whether that came out this year or not, but it's on Game Pass, so we've been playing that for the last few weeks when we've been able to. Fortnite and Rocket League have also been really good games to play with friends, and that's quite surprising, realistically, but it is what it is. I think that's most of the really good, memorable games that I have played this year. So those are my awards and special mentions for 2021. Hopefully I'll have thrown up some footage over the top of what I've been saying there, just to keep it interesting, because I've just been looking at my FF14 character in her scholar outfit, which I really like, by the way. I think this is a really, really nice piece of AF gear. I hope you've enjoyed the list, folks. If you've got your own best in category for each of those, by all means drop them down in the comments below. I'd be interested to see what games that you've played this year, some of which, or probably a lot of which, I haven't played, heard of, touched, own the console for, etc, etc. Just let me know what your games of the year were in various categories. Have yourselves a wonderful new year. Enjoy 2022 as much as is possible in the current climate, and I'll catch you all as we go forwards into this new year. Cheerio. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, why not click the like button and consider subscribing. Remember, you can ring the bell notification icon to get notified when new videos go live. And until next time, cheerio.